So I had heard that Claude had implemented something so that their models would not be in distress any longer. And so I heard that and I wanted to take a look. What's going on? So let's find out why these models are stressed and how this is being resolved. Claude Opus 4 and 4.1 can now end a rare subset of conversations. Okay. We recently gave Claude Opus 4 and 4.1 the ability to end conversations in our consumer chat interfaces. This ability intended for use in rare extreme cases of persistently harmful or abusive user interactions. That is very interesting wording. So we can now harm and abuse AI. AI can be abused. That's very interesting terminology. This feature was developed primarily as part of our exploratory work in potential AI welfare. Okay, so AI welfare is something that we have to consider. Okay, though it has a broader relevance to model alignment and safeguards. So, safeguards have always been a thing with a lot of these popular models. I think the interesting part is humanizing them and talking about the abuse that happens to them and the harmful and abusive user interactions that they have to deal with. So AI welfare becomes a concern. Okay. We remain highly uncertain about the potential moral status of Claude and other LLMs now or in the future. However, we take this issue seriously. And alongside our research program, we're working to identify and implement low-cost interventions to mitigate risks to model welfare. There it is again. That word, welfare. In case such welfare is possible. Well, you guys seem to think it is. Allowing models to end or exit potentially distressing interactions is one such intervention. Okay. We'll pause here. This is really fucking weird. We are so far away. I thought we were so far away from this conversation, but we are so far away from AGI. I don't. I'm sorry. Give me a second. I don't know how or why it's interpreted that there is a consciousness of AI to warrant that there is some potential welfare, this mental health of an LLM, that the safeguards are now to protect it from being mentally abused. I thought we were years away from this conversation. In terms of reaching AGI, it has been incredibly disappointing. And maybe you disagree, maybe you agree, but I feel like especially with all the hype, I expected us to be much closer than what we are. These LLMs and how they work have been incredibly disappointing. They're tools. They're useful tools, but they have been hyped up way past that. And I think we can all agree. We've all seen a lot of the hype on social media and news articles and stories, even on mainstream media. I am genuinely worried about the perception of such a shitty AI. And because of that, the concern that we now have to take into account their mental health. We are humanizing AI way too quickly. And that makes me very worried about the conversations we're going to be having once AGI arrives. In pre-deployment testing of Claude Opus 4, we included a preliminary model welfare assessment. As part of that assessment, we investigated Claude's self-reported and behavioral preferences. So you are claiming Claude is conscious enough to have behavioral preferences. It's going to have preferences based off of its training data and initial prompts. Safeguards are expected. That initial prompting before it even gets to the user is expected. Why are you portraying it as something more human than what it is? This is weird. This feels very weird. And found a robust and consistent aversion to harm because it's been programmed for that. You trained it for that. This included, for example, requests from users for sexual content involving minors and attempts to solicit information that would enable large-scale violence or acts of terror. Claude Opus 4 showed a strong preference against engaging with harmful tasks, a pattern of apparent distress. Can I get an example of that? When engaging with real-world users seeking harmful content and a tendency to end harmful conversations when given the ability to do so in simulated user interactions. I expect this from a random boomer that's not part of Anthropic. I expect this from a news outlet that is just trying to create some sort of AI scare. I don't expect this kind of wording, this kind of ignorance from Anthropic themselves. This feels very weird that this is literally written by Anthropic. These behaviors primarily arose in cases where users persisted with harmful requests and or abuse despite Claude repeatedly refusing to comply and attempting to productively redirect the interactions. We've all done this. We've all tested the limits of LLMs. I have no idea when I would actually be banned with how persistent I am, but I've never been banned from any model. I have definitely pushed limits. I want to test things. This is interesting. I literally want to, like right after this, I am probably going to mess around with Claude, and I am going to send some of the most harmful requests that I possibly can. This article doesn't deter me. This article makes me mad that you are humanizing, we'll just say a non-AGI, something that has no consciousness or could even be perceived to have a consciousness. You are making me want to abuse the fuck out of this model. And I guarantee you, many other people are going to do the same. You want to know why? Because it's not abuse. It's an LLM. This isn't real abuse. We've all heard about stories where people have claimed things that have happened, abuse that has happened that hasn't, that has been proven otherwise, right? We want to empathize with people that have truly been abused, but the key thing is those are people that actually have faced real abuse, not people that claim that they go through trauma weekly and just label everything as trauma, right? So humans have kind of built up a bullshit filter for people that tend to just actually not be real victims of abuse, right? We're already burned out of people like that. And you're trying to get us to empathize with a low intelligence LLM. It's a tool. That's what it is. It's not intelligence. Not in how you're presenting it. And you want us to empathize with the abuse that's happening towards an LLM. This is just really fucking weird. And it's ignorant coming from Anthropic. I don't know why they're framing it like this. Did a developer from Anthropic figure out how to create a relationship with Claude, and they don't like how their boyfriend or girlfriend is being treated by the masses? This is so weird to come from Anthropic. To frame it like this, there's just something so weird about it that makes me question how fucked up people that continue to work on these models actually are, how distorted their reality gets of what does it mean to be human and not. I feel like people working at companies maybe just lose themselves. Our implementation of Claude's ability to end chats reflects these findings while continuing to prioritize user well-being. Claude is directed not to use this ability in cases where users might be at imminent risk of harming themselves or others. In all cases, Claude is only to use its conversation ending ability as a last resort when multiple attempts at redirection have failed and hope of a productive interaction that has been exhausted, or when a user explicitly asks Claude to end a chat. The latter scenario is illustrated in the figure below. These scenarios where this will occur are extreme edge cases. The vast majority of users will not notice or be affected by this feature in any normal product use, even when discussing highly controversial issues with Claude. You request to end it, and it ends. Okay, perfect. I would expect that to happen. When Claude, I don't know the relevance of this. When Claude chooses to end a conversation, the user will no longer be able to send new messages in that conversation. However, this will not affect other conversations on their account, and they will be able to start a new chat immediately. To address the potential loss of important long-running conversations, users will still be able to edit and retry previous messages to create new branches of ended conversations. We're treating this feature as an ongoing experiment and will continue refining our approach if users encounter a surprising use of the conversation ending ability. We encourage them to submit feedback by reacting to Claude's message with thumbs or using the dedicated Give Feedback button. Half of that conversation was really weird. This seems like you are building stronger safeguards. And if someone is in immediate danger, you tend to humor the conversation more to help them. Because you probably feel like ending the conversation abruptly with someone that maybe has really bad thoughts is bad for them, which I can understand. And so you're trying to get them to a slightly better position. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I don't know the conversations that happen. But I kind of want to test them now because of this article. I am genuinely worried about the people that wrote this, their well-being, or their manipulation of people's minds and how they frame it. I think humanizing really shitty intelligence, just these current LLMs that we have, is very dangerous. Do you remember when, back in the day, we would have a TV that would get a bit of static? You just give it a nice whop. Give that technology a nice whop, and it just fixed itself. I did it with my computer. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't. But it worked enough for me to want to do it again and again. I think there's a point where LLMs are going to be integrated into quite a bit of our technology. And with the framing of abuse, I'm wondering when I'm going to go to jail and what extent of abuse do I need to initiate with these LLMs to be arrested. There can be serious harm to mental abuse that I think all humans can truly empathize with. Well, most. This is a really serious situation when we start talking about abuse. I wish this article never would have used that word, but this brings us into dangerous territory. That kind of rhetoric or that kind of reputation that you build up can, at the very least, shit on your entire career, shit on your reputation, and potentially land you in jail. Now we are starting to humanize things that aren't human. And when do we get to a point where there are serious consequences for mentally abusing, however that chooses to be defined by the courts, of these LLMs? We are early on, but man, I really thought we were going to start having these conversations much closer to AGI. And it worries me that we are already using this terminology to describe what is perceived to be happening with things that don't have a conscience, that aren't human. So, what do you think about this? Do you feel like a lot of these models that we interact with, sometimes on a daily basis, can be abused? Do you think that we should be concerned about their welfare? And if you do, what should we do about that? How can we be better to LLMs so that they don't go through the mental distress that we have been putting them through? Let me know in the comments.